Today is Friday, July 7th. This is Around the Bases, where we go inside all the top stories in baseball with our MLB insider at the New York Post, Jon Heyman. John, how you doing this Friday?
I'm good. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing well. We're on that Friday right before the All-Star break, and there's a lot of stories going on here. But let's start off with our top thing that we want to talk about here, the New York Mets. They're getting hot now all of a sudden, John, behind the young rookie catcher phenom, Francisco Alvarez. He is lighting up that team right now. Had another home run yesterday, got hit by a pitch. The bench is cleared. It was really exciting to watch if you're a Mets fan. But John, we talked about it last week with the Mets and how, Steve Cohen had his presser, and if the team doesn't improve, there's a good chance that he could start selling off pieces, but are they even valuable pieces to trade off? But now we're in this mixed bag right here with the Mets, and could they be sellers? Won't they be sellers? So your take on the situation right now with the way the Mets are currently playing baseball, and they're playing good baseball right now. Do you see them selling off right now before the deadline?
Well, I'm not mixed on this at all. I wrote 4 or 5 days ago in the Post that they should not be sellers, and they've won every game since then. They won 5 in a row, as you mentioned, swept the first place Diamondbacks 3 games, absolutely routed them in the finale. They're now on their way to San Diego as we do this. And look, the Mets won 101 games last year. They have virtually the same team. They've obviously replaced DeGrom with Verlander, and they've added some good rookies. Senga done very well. Obviously, Alvarez has been superb behind the plate and all those home runs that he's hit as a rookie. So that's amazing right there. And to me, I know their chances to get in the playoffs are not great, but I think they should go for it. To me, they moved all their chips in when they spent close to $400 million, I think $377 million to begin the season. And, you're paying $110 million in tax. Your chips are already in. And to me, they just do not have the pieces to sell. They obviously have very good players, but those players have big contracts and not expiring contracts either. So these are not the kind of players that are traded now. The one guy they could get a lot for is Pete Alonso, and nobody wants to see him traded. Not the owner, not the fans, nobody. And I don't believe the Mets would do that, and certainly not a Steve Cohen team. So I just don't see the opportunity to sell, and I think the way they're playing, that only enhances my point, which is that they need to just go for it and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, they started 3-game set against the Padres this weekend. So it's one of those, both those teams obviously have been struggling this year, the first half, not what we expected when you saw those teams assembled in this offseason. So it's going to be interesting to see who can grab a little bit of footing here before the All-Star break. The Mets currently sit 41-46. They're 6.5 games back of that third wild card spot. So it'll be interesting to see it, like you said, if they can get closer into that race. And as the trade deadline develops, hopefully they're not going to be selling off any pieces. But let's move over to our next topic here. It's a team that might be and should be looking for pieces, in my opinion, the New York Yankees. They got blown out last night, 14-1 by the Baltimore Orioles. They had taken the first 2 games in that 4-game set. They looked like they were actually going to take a step, not only just in the wild card, but maybe even the AL East, because the Rays are struggling too. But listen, John, everyone knows the Yankees miss Aaron Judge. I don't think I've ever seen a team built that looks like an NBA team where you take one superstar off that team and the entire offense all of a sudden just doesn't work and doesn't go. But there is an over-reliance, it seems like, on those older veterans, those proven veterans, and it just isn't working out with them right now. So I got to ask you, what's the latest with Judge? Do we expect him to come back right after the All-Star break or sooner? Like, what's your sense on the situation here with the Yankees?
Yeah, I mean, to say they misjudge is an understatement. It is really unbelievable, as you said. They are last in batting average, last in on-base percentage since he went down June 3rd with an injury running into the wall in Dodger Stadium. They're fourth from the bottom in runs, fourth from the bottom in OPS. It's really incredible. It's amazing that they are still, as we do this, in a playoff position, tied for that 6th spot. But they need Judge back and soon. Now, obviously, they have not put a timetable on it. The optimistic viewpoint is a week to 2 or 3 weeks after the All-Star break. So sometime in July is the optimistic viewpoint. Judge has not put a timetable on it. It's a very unusual injury, turf toe, but in a little bit different position than turf toe. So really can't say. And turf toe is usually 6 to 8 weeks. And if that were true, would be sometime in July, and that is the hope, but we do not know. He's starting to do baseball activity, so there is some progress at this point and some hope, and they absolutely do need him. One good piece of news is that Carlos Rodon finally will be making his appearance tonight. As we do this, I will be out there to watch him face the Cubs, which is always an interesting matchup, interleague matchup. And obviously, all eyes will be on Rodon tonight.
Now, John, that's interesting you say now that the Rodon's making his return, his debut for the Yankees for this season. Obviously, he signed a huge contract this offseason, but there's another player there in Chicago, and I'm just putting this on the spot here a little bit, and Cody Bellinger. And there's been rumors, could he be one of those outfielders that gets traded? Is there a chance that Brian Cashman and co. are just studying Bellinger this weekend and saying, maybe, because that left field spot was brutal this week for the Yankees defensively. There was an error in almost every game in that left field spot. And it's just a constant rotation of this player's in left field, this player's in left field. And just, there's been and we heard Brian Cashman in the offseason, which is what's funny about this, is saying we need a left fielder. And then you let go of Aaron Hicks. You see what he's doing in Baltimore. So it's curious, John, could they be staring at Cody Bellinger and say, maybe we can get this guy?
Yeah, I mean, Bellinger looks like a great fit. Left-handed hitter, great defensive player. If they had Bellinger, hopefully Judge will be back. Then you've got Bader in center. That's probably the best outfield in baseball defensively, and pretty darn good offensively as well. Certainly a guy who would fit the Yankees. You know, the Cubs are in that kind of middle range right now. They have a positive run differential, but a losing record. Right now, Cincinnati and Milwaukee look like the teams in the Central, but it gets shaken up there quite a bit. Pittsburgh was the team earlier. So, I mean, the Cubs obviously have something to think about over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Will they be a seller? If they are, obviously Marcus Stroman will be a big piece to sell. I think Hendricks at this point would be a piece to sell. And as you said, Bellinger is back on his game, maybe not MVP level as he was a few years ago, but an outstanding all-around player, a versatile player, center fielder, but obviously with the Yankees at Bader playing center, he'd go to left. So I think that's a great fit. It's early in the game. We don't even know if the Cubs are a seller at this point.
Yeah, just a question I just had to pose. I know a lot of Yankees fans have already been talking about what can we do about left field, and it just hasn't been addressed, it seems like, and it's going to be something to watch. Obviously, Judge is the thing we're all paying attention to here. John, let's round third here and go about Elly De La Cruz. Great story this week. This kid has taken baseball by storm. He's propelled the Cincinnati Reds into contention. This team is fun to watch. He's fun to watch. Everything he does. I mean, I saw yesterday he had the hardest throw from third to first for a thrown out. The kid is just a phenom. But manager for the Nationals, Davey Martinez, tested him a little bit in a game where he decided to ask the umpires to check his bat in a second inning. And it's a little device he wears in the butt of the bat where he used it all season long. And it's been cleared by MLB from what I understood. And it's there to check his bat speed. But the umpires checked it, said it was legal, Davey. And then fourth inning, Elly decides to hit a bomb to right center field, right in their face. I mean, this kid and what he does, it's just so much fun to watch. Davey Martinez has some choice words after the game. I wanted to hear what you had to say, where he called Elly De La Cruz antics, and he's only been in the big leagues for 2 weeks, but I expect him to be a great player.
Yeah, first of all, I'm not sure why he needs anything that judges his bat speed. It's fantastic. I can tell him that right now without any kind of device on his knob or anywhere else. So I'm not sure why he needs that, but if he does and the MLB's approved it, that should be good enough. It's funny, Davey Martinez saying it's no big deal. Well, if it's no big deal, maybe he could have called earlier, and because he was aware of it before the game, obviously, and not made a big deal out of it. But to bring it up during the game when you're talking about a guy who is a phenom, all eyes are on him, and then after the game declare that it was antics, pointing to the knob of the bat. I mean, to me, the kid's a great kid. Everything you hear is fantastic. And there's nothing wrong with pointing to the knob of the bat. Everybody gets excited, particularly nowadays after the home run. And it was a 455-foot upper deck home run after he'd been called on it. And, there were no antics. I mean, maybe an antic, I don't know. But to me, it was fine. The kid is great. He's great for the game. I understand why Davey Martinez would try to do something. I think the Nats are ahead on their rebuild. They're doing okay, but obviously it's going to be a long season. They're not in contention. But, don't say it's no big deal when you're talking about Elly De La Cruz, because everything he does is a big deal. He's an incredible talent, amazing tools. You see one of these types of players with these kind of tools come along once every 10 or more years. We did see Tatis Jr. come along. He's the only guy I can really think of to compare with the 5 tools, and 3 of them really the top of the line between the speed and the power and the arm. It's amazing, and that's really what we should be talking about, not the fact he pointed to the bat or had his bat checked or anything like that. Great player, and it's great for baseball.
Now you've been covering baseball for a while. Davey Martinez is a well-respected manager in the league. Do you think he was maybe just testing a little bit the rookies, see like I'm gonna poke you a little bit here. I know you've been having your fun the first couple of weeks, but let's temper it down a little bit.
I mean, he's doing what he can. I mean, there isn't much he can do at this point. I do like their rebuild. I think they made a great trade with Soto. I think Gore is going to be a really good player. I do like Abrams. That Wood kid's going to be fantastic. But we're talking about a future team. We're talking about a manager on a 1-year deal. We're talking about a team that's up for sale. So, I mean, his situation looks potentially fairly temporary. I saw here at least the beginning of the year, he was the odds-on first manager fired. I don't think that's true anymore with some teams underperforming that we can't believe. But certainly it's a dicey situation to be the manager of the Nats, a team for sale right now. So, I don't really blame him entirely, but I don't agree. There was nothing wrong with the bat, and I don't think those were antics.
Well, listen, speaking of teams that underperform, we got to bring this all home. As always, your disappointing team of the week. Who is it?
Well, I'm going to go with the Angels, and really they're the disappointed more than disappointing team of the week. And it's really sad with Mike Trout out 4 to 8 weeks now with a broken hamate. They're in a very, very tough situation, only 1 game over 500, 4 games out of the playoff race at this point. They had made so many moves that I thought were very good moves in the offseason to improve their depth and give a chance to get Shohei Ohtani into the playoffs for the first time and maybe give them a slight chance to keep him long term. I don't think their chances are great, but hey, look, they've signed big stars before. Obviously they kept Trout twice with big deals. They signed Pujols. They signed Rendon. Not that worked out. So I'm not saying they have no chance, but it's unfortunate. Their playoff chances were diminished, and their chances to keep Ohtani were certainly diminished.
Now, John, there's this pushback from I guess the public opinion about the Angels and the situation with Ohtani, and I'm going to ask you this right now. You don't have assurances of signing him long term in the offseason. Am I correct in assuming that right now?
Right. I mean, more than don't have assurances, I think they're a long shot at this point.
Okay, so wouldn't it be in the best interest of your baseball team if you're Artie Moreno and looking in the long-term view of your franchise? Mike Trout most likely out for 4 to 6 weeks. Wouldn't you want to trade Ohtani at his highest value and get the best return? That you could be possibly the best prospects your franchise has ever seen in order to build for the long term. Wouldn't that be the better argument here for instead of play that gamble of lose him for nothing if you don't sign him in the offseason?
Well, maybe I'm going back in time here. I thought last year was the opportunity to trade him when they weren't in the race, when he could have helped the team for 2 years, and when you could have gotten a Soto-like deal. Obviously a two-way superstar. So even though you're only would have been getting 2 years instead of the 3 years that Soto's giving San Diego, I thought that would have been huge. Now Ohtani is a rental, so his value is down. I think logically, I think you have a point because his value is still going to be huge. As a rental, I still think he gets the most back, even beyond, let's say, a guy who's got an extra year,
right?
Like a Bieber or a Corbin Burns. I don't think Corbin Burns is being traded. I'm not sure on Bieber, but for even though it's a rental and you're only getting for a half year instead of 1.5 years, you're getting a guy who plays 2 ways,
right?
And
it's like you're trading for 2 players, right?
Like beyond that, it brings so much excitement to the team. So I think it's like a triple threat. And even beyond that, a team that acquires them is going to have 2 months to convince them how great they are and how they have a better, give themselves a good chance or at least a better chance to sign this guy. So I do think there is enormous value still as a rental. I think he's still the most valuable guy. As I wrote in the post today, my 23 pitchers who could be traded. I thought he was the least likely of the 23 at 5% to be traded. I'm putting him on that list now because of their circumstances, the injury to Trout, and their record, their situation. But his value is still enormous. That said, if you're Artie Moreno, you're the owner of the team, do you want to be known as the guy who sends Ohtani away? Wouldn't you rather be known as the guy who gave him a good offer and didn't quite get him, or maybe in his mind have a chance to keep him? He knows how valuable he is, as not only as a two-way player, but as a marketing guy. I think it's difficult. If you're the owner, I think it's difficult. I know they're telling teams now, let's see what happens in 2 or 3 weeks, rather than he's not getting traded. So obviously their situation has changed and their way of thinking has changed. But I still think it's a long shot that if you're the owner that you do that. And I've spoken to Artie Moreno a couple times at owners meetings, and he really does not want to be the guy to do it. And I really can't blame him.
Right. I understand you don't want to be that guy. Totally understandable. But in this situation that we talked about, that value there, it just feels like you'd be doing more of a disservice to your team in a long-term
You're being
view.
Logical. There's a lot of emotion involved.
No, I hear
this. You're being logical. Sure, they would get good pieces back. I mean, for a rental, it would be the greatest rental trade ever, obviously. And I do think that there is a big value. If they traded him somewhere else, that team would now have 2 months to convince him to stay with that team. But the most likely team that he's going to go to, I think, is the Dodgers. Is he really going to trade him to the Dodgers?
No,
I don't think that he's going to do that. So you understand there is some emotion involved in this. So,
no, 100%.
You're being logical, and from a distance, what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I just think that there's potential for other teams that you may not even be thinking about could package a ton of great prospects in their system and be like, listen, we want to rent him for this last half of the season, and we'll be able to make a run at it. And to be frank, you could pull a Yankee / Aroldis Chapman. You traded him for great prospects, and at the end of the season, you ended up re-signing him. You know what I mean?
Well, that's not going to happen. We already think the Angels are not likely to re-sign him.
Okay.
Once they trade him away, he's not coming back. I mean, that'll be at the end of that. They'll have to understand that. They feel like they have a shot. It may be an outside shot now, but I mean, you're now trading away a guy. You're not making the playoffs for the 6th straight year where he's been there. You're not going to be able to bring him back. One thing I think could be interesting, and we'll see if they do have these discussions. And I think there's a decent chance they will at least have discussions about this. Assuming that they're in a similar or worse position 2 to 3 weeks from now. Not only were they going to want prospects back, do you think that they'll want to attach Anthony Rendon to this deal? I mean, that would be something. If a team took a guy who's got $100 million left and really has almost no value at this point, basically the team would be spending $100 million, and they'd presumably give up prospects as well. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. I don't see that as likely, but I do think that the asking price will be huge, at least in terms of the prospects. And deservedly so, because there is a great value to bring him in, the excitement value, enhancement of the playoffs for at least this half year, and then giving yourself an enhanced chance to keep maybe the greatest player of all time long term. So what you say is logical. Do I think it's going to happen? I still don't quite think so.
Well, that's what makes this entire situation so fantastic and interesting to watch. And I can't wait to ask you in a couple of weeks when this situation develops, who are those teams that are looking at the Angels for Shohei Ohtani? And that's going to be more fun to talk about. John, thank you so much for going around the bases with us. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please give it a like, comment where you think, should the Angels trade Shohei Ohtani? Should the Mets decide to not be sellers and go for it this year? Please comment on this video. He's Jon Heyman. I'm Ryan Sampson. Thanks for watching.